Hey, what's up, Rattlers? So let's talk about one of my favorite gecko species, the Tokay gecko. They're big, they're colorful, they're boisterous, and here in Thailand, they are literally everywhere. They are one of the most common gecko species here, and in this village in northern Thailand, to find them, all you've really got to do is open your eyes. They're on all the trees, on fence posts, they're in the rafters of all the houses in this village. So I'm here in northern Thailand right now, and in this video, we're going to look into how Tokay geckos are living out here in the wild so that we can better know how to care for them in our homes.
I'm Dāv Kaufman, and I tour the world to see how reptiles are living in the wild. And while I'm at it, checking out some of the most amazing facilities and reptile expos as well. It's all about learning, appreciation, and conservation. So come with me and join my Reptile Adventures.
At Rainbow Mealworms, we grow all our insects 100% naturally so that you get the freshest, most lively feeders on the market. So for all your reptile food needs, place your order today at rainbowmealworms.net.
So a lot of people don't know that there's actually different types of Tokay geckos. As a matter of fact, there's 5 different species here in Thailand alone. But the common Tokay gecko is the most commonly known, and that's what I'm going to focus on in this video. Still to this day, Tokay geckos are one of the most imported reptiles in the world. And Tokay geckos, they have a huge range. They're not just found here in Thailand. They range from Nepal down to India, over to China, all through the Siam Peninsula here and down into Indonesia. They have a huge range for a gecko. And Tokay gecko's scientific name is Gecko gecko, and they're named by the call that they make. So at night, when they call out to each other, they make that sound, gecko, gecko, and that's where the Tokay gecko gets its name. There's another thought that they're actually saying, Tokay, Tokay, and that's where the Tokay gecko gets its name. Either way, they get their name by the call that they make. But they do have a reputation of being really aggressive, and the wild ones out here are really no exception. I just know by the end of this video I'm gonna get bit. But right now we're on our way to a Buddhist temple here in this village where the monk who lives there actually, for lack of a better word, he's the caretaker for the wild population of Tokay geckos that live there. And he's invited us here to show us all the Tokay geckos that are found here on the temple grounds. So during the day here on the sides of this temple, the Tokay geckos will come out and hang in these shadows. There's a gecko right there. It's one of the house geckos that's found here in Thailand. It's not a Tokay, but you can see that they come out during the day as well as at night. Look at this. He caught these giant Tokays
แต่
here.
ระวังมันกัดนะมันบอกเลยมันกัด
Yeah.
Be careful, they might bite you.
Look at the size of that Tokay.
Wow.
Giant head on that guy.
That is amazing.
Yeah, you wouldn't want those chompers to get your fingers.
Wow. So we come to this temple to give the monk an offering in order for him to say a prayer for us to have success in finding, Tokay geckos and other reptiles. And literally 5 minutes later, the monk comes up to us with these enormous Tokay geckos. All right, Rattler, so take a look at this wild Tokay gecko that the monk here at this temple was kind enough to catch for us so that I could film. But, one of the things that I want to show you guys is how to sex Tokay geckos, and it's really easy. So all you do is you take your finger and you run it from the vent forward. And if you feel that it's rough, like this guy, it's a male. And if it's smooth, then it's a female. All right, I'm going to stop doing this to him because that's getting kind of weird. Anyway, we're going to take these back exactly where we found them and release them because the monk actually... Hey, ow! See? What was I saying about aggression? So that's him biting me, and what he's doing is he's actually vice gripping me. So that's like pliers with these tiny little diamond shards on it biting into the flesh of my finger right now. So that hurts, but... yeah, this kind of reminds me of, Yeah, this one lace monitor in Australia that one time. All right, so this is what happens when a huge, wild male Tokay gecko grabs you by the finger. This was kind of inevitable for me filming this video. I knew that I was going to get nailed by these guys. It stings a little, but you know what? Really, it's not really all that bad. I'm just going to go clean it up and get on with the rest of this video.
แต่ถ้าหางขาดแล้วก็เหลือครึ่งเดียว
He said
มัน
he
จะอยู่
tried.
มันจะวางไข่ตรงบริเวณนี้
He
แต่
tried to protect these.
Oh,
Because
okay.
sometimes some people get in here and then they try to catch these and then they sell it to the market. So this
Right.
one, the price can get like 200 baht. That's one about 100 baht.
Okay,
They will get
sure.
all kinds of size, and then they will go to that, that village, and then they turn it into a jerky-looking thing.
So essentially what the monk is saying is that he wants to make sure that we release these Tokays exactly where we found them, because there's a village around here where all the Tokay geckos are completely gone because poachers have gone into those villages and have taken every single Tokay gecko that they can find out of that village. And a big guy like that one would sell for about 200 baht, which is about $6.50 US. And they're sold to China for their medicinal purposes. It's absolutely ridiculous, and it has completely decimated Tokay gecko populations. And so what the monk wants to make sure is that these geckos here in this temple are as protected as they deserve to be and as they can be, so that poachers don't come onto this temple ground and remove the Tokay geckos from the temple as they have from the surrounding areas.
Oh, there you go. There's that aggression coming.
There
through.
is that aggression.
Fight or flight. He likes to fight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Doesn't like your microphone just like all other animals.
Right. So there we go. That is the classic Tokay defense position. They have two choices. They can either fight or flight. And this one, he wants to fight. But just look at those little needle-like teeth. Those are the ones that just sunk into my finger. So we've just released those Tokays, and yeah, I'm still bleeding from that bite. And I knew that this was inevitable. You know, Tokays, especially wild ones out here in Thailand, they are naturally aggressive. And I kind of knew the risks of, handling a huge male like that. So anyway, I'm just gonna wrap myself up like this. Make sure that doesn't fall off, and I'm gonna go find some more Tokay geckos out here. So this is a typical forest here in northern Thailand, and this is where the Tokay geckos are hanging out when they're not hanging out in human habitations. But this is what the ground substrate looks like in this forest. So you've got these really big leaves that are giving cover to a lot of things under here, but it really typically looks like any forest floor anywhere really in the world. You've got a bunch of dry leaves and you've got these small little shoots coming up, but if you go underneath here, it's all dirt, and under that dirt is kind of moist. So if Tokay geckos are primarily arboreal, and very rarely do they ever come out of the trees or off the rafters to ever touch this ground, why is substrate really important in your Tokay's enclosure? Well, the answer to that is to hold in that humidity in that enclosure. So you use the substrate to do that. So if you use, Freedom Breeder cocoa blocks and you use sphagnum moss on top of that layer of cocoa blocks, that substrate is going to hold in the humidity that your Tokay gecko needs in its enclosure. So the other habitat for Tokay geckos out here in the wild of Thailand, like for this female right here, who just pooped on me. So, of course, wild Tokay geckos live in the forests and the jungles, but you can't really talk about the complete habitats of the Tokay gecko without now talking about the new habitats for Tokay geckos, which are people's homes. So the amount of respect that the people have for these geckos here in this village is just amazing. So the woman who owns this particular house invited us over to see her resident Tokay geckos, and these geckos are as welcome in her house as the family dog, and she very specifically requested that when I'm done filming this segment that I release this gecko right on the wall over there, because this gecko has a whole bunch of eggs that are laid right here in this woman's kitchen. So if this occurred in any other place in the world, people would probably call an exterminator, but here in this village in Thailand, these geckos are actually revered and welcomed in people's houses. So when it comes to hot spots and cool spots in your enclosures, I'm going to take some temperature readings right here in the Tokay gecko's natural range. So this is midday here, and I'm going to take some temperature readings here, and these temperatures will illustrate what your ambient temperature for your enclosure should be. Right now, in the heat of the day, the ambient temperature is 89 degrees, and because this is the dry season, we're only reading about 44% humidity. Their basking spot, on the other hand, should be quite higher, at least 95 to 105 degrees. And because this is the dry season, it's only 44% humidity out here, but that is not optimal for your enclosures. Humidity in your enclosures should be at about 60 to 80%. Any higher than that, and you could run into problems like fungal infections. So a perfect enclosure for your Tokay gecko would be any of Zilla's front opening cages. They already come with a built-in screen top that you can use to adjust the humidity within your enclosure. So Tokay geckos are primarily nocturnal, however they do come out in the daytime, and even in the heat of the day like this, they will come out to bask. And therefore, let's talk a little bit about UV lighting. And you don't think about a nocturnal species like a Tokay gecko needing UV lighting, but they do. Having a UVB emitting bulb on your enclosure is really beneficial, and that can really help them regulate that vitamin D3 and that calcium. So it's a really good idea to have that UVB emitting bulb, but you don't need to have it on all day long. 4 to 6 hours is really sufficient for Tokay geckos, and you can find all of this equipment at ZillaRules.com. Little shameless plug for the sponsors. So on that note, a photo period is really beneficial for your Tokay gecko. And a good rule of thumb is to have a fluorescent on about 12 to 14 hours a day to give them that photo period that they need. So when it comes to breeding Tokay geckos will reach sexual maturity at about a year, but you know, it's really a good idea to give them that extra year and wait until your Tokay gecko is at least 2 years old before you start breeding. And the great thing about Tokay geckos is that they will breed all year long and lay eggs all throughout the year. So look at what these Tokay geckos are doing out here in the wild in Thailand. They are finding little crevices in the roofs of these houses, and they are gluing their eggs to the vertical surfaces in between the roof structure of these houses. In forested areas like this one, they will lay their eggs in any little crevice or crack that they deem is going to be a good, safe place to glue their 2 eggs at a time that they lay. But in our domestic situations, the care of the eggs is just a little bit different than it is out here in Thailand. Once the eggs are laid, I would not suggest removing them from where they were laid in the enclosure to incubate them in an incubator. Because if you remove them, you have a really good chance of breaking those eggs open and killing them. Also, if there's any disturbance in the cage furniture, the female may stop producing eggs. So my advice would be to leave those eggs and let them incubate within the enclosure themselves. Also, if you remove those eggs, the female may stop laying. Now, there's a lot of talk about will the parents eat the eggs if you leave them in the enclosure, and if they are their eggs, they won't eat them. The adult females and the adult males will not eat their own eggs. If there is another female or another male within that enclosure, yeah, you have a pretty good chance of them eating those eggs. But if you have a male and a female together that are laying eggs in that enclosure, the parents will not eat those eggs. So not disturbing any of the furniture in the enclosure is really important once that female starts laying. And she will lay another clutch of 2 eggs every 30 days, and she will lay them in the exact same spot that she laid those previous 2 eggs. So again, do not disturb any of the cork or bamboo or any of the furniture that you have in your enclosure once that female starts laying eggs. And out here in the wild, as well as in captivity, those eggs should hatch in about 90 to 120 days. So that's basically a rundown of what your Tokay gecko needs during the day, what the hot spot and the ambient temperature and the humidity should be in your enclosure, complete with a photo period and UVB emitting bulbs. But what about at nighttime when Tokay geckos are most active? Alright, Rattlers, so we're back at the temple here at night, and the monk who lives here that we met earlier today has invited us back after dark to go around the temple and see all the Tokay geckos that are here. I've gone herping with a lot of really awesome people all over the world, but this is the first time that I've actually gone herping with a Buddhist monk. This is just incredible. Okay, so now that it's night, let's take a temperature reading here at night. So the temperature is 78 degrees, but look at that humidity. It's risen to almost 60% humidity, which is at the low end of the optimal humidity needed for Tokay geckos. So the humidity at night has actually risen to about 60%, which makes sense because the sun isn't out and therefore it's not burning off that humidity. So when you go to daily mist your cages, do it in the evening if you want to simulate what the natural humidity is doing out here in the wild.
ข้างล่าง
All right, on this house is the biggest gecko I've ever seen.
เดี๋ยวองค์เดิมท่านเนี่ยดูมูลมันอ่ะ
Yeah.
เนี่ยมันจะกินแมลงเนี่ยแมล
So
ง
that is all.
ปีกเริ่มเนี่ยเรียกว่าแมลงตัวเล็กๆล่ามช่วยแปลหน่อยสิ
Okay, he wants me to explain it to you
ตัววิ่ง
guys.
ไปน่ะ
I have to do it.
Yeah.
He says there's a poop of it, and
Yes.
because of sometimes you will see the beetle's wings
Moon,
and
moon
all
man,
that
moon,
in
moon.
there.
That's all Tokay gecko poop, and there's a lot of insects in that poop.
วิ่ง
So obviously, Tokay geckos are eating a lot of insects out here, but Tokay geckos are not strictly insectivorous. They will eat soft and hard-bodied invertebrates out here, but they also eat other types of meat, including all the house geckos that we see around here, and they can also resort to cannibalism, eating baby Tokay geckos as well. So for your Tokay geckos at home, feed them crickets that are dusted with D3 and calcium, but also offer them dubias and other soft-bodied invertebrates like mealworms and silkworms and waxworms, all of which you can get at rainbowmealworms.net. Little plug for the sponsor there.
ต้นไม้มันล้มทับไป
Baby, I see a baby. The baby was so cute. It's going up here.
A human
I got it.
Can you get it?
Yeah, that's a Tokay gecko's baby.
Oh.
Look at that. A baby Tokay. Look at that. Look at
Apple.
those big eyes. And that heavily banded tail.
โอเคเจอแล้ว
Wow, that is just great. All right, so we're going up. Wait, this is a very steep steps here. But I want to come up here with the monk and see if we can see this giant in this abandoned house
ไม่อยาก
here.
ให้มาดูเท่าไหร่
Oh yeah, this guy was huge. Now we don't see him.
มีตัวนั้นแหละตัวใหญ่อะ
Yeah.
ตัวนั้น
Oh, where'd he go?
เป็น
Like herping in Silent Hill. The biggest Tokay gecko I've ever seen while filming a Tokay gecko video. And he's a no-show. We have no idea where he went. Alright. Show yourself, big man. Look who just showed up. Oh,
นั่นแหละ
there he is.
เอาจับไปเป็นไหมหรือถ่ายเลยดีกว่า
Look
ถ่าย
at
เลย
that.
ถ่ายสดๆนะ
Whoa! Whoa! Oh, rattlers, that was the biggest Tokay gecko I have ever seen. That was at least 15, maybe 16 inches. Just an enormous Tokay gecko, but he ran over the wall into the other room. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to see if I can see him. He ran over that crevice there, so he's got to be in this room somewhere. All right, Tokay gecko hide and seek champion of the world. This guy. So there are so many crevices in this abandoned building that he can go and hide in, even as big as he is. But at least we got to see a glimpse of a man. Whew, the biggest Tokay gecko I have ever seen. That was awesome. So rattlers, I hope that this video shed a little bit of light and gave you some ideas on how to better take care of your Tokay geckos at home. I gotta say, Tokay geckos are one of those geckos that really has a kind of a bad reputation of being aggressive, and obviously they are out here, but the ones that we have in herpetoculture, they can be really rewarding geckos to work with, and they're kind of overshadowed by the other geckos, by the Leachianus and the crested geckos and the gargoyle geckos. But if you're working with Tokay geckos, then you know how awesome they are, and if you haven't worked with Tokay geckos, well, I hope you guys look into them because they really are awesome lizards. So anyway, guys, as always with these videos, leave a comment below with a tip or a technique on how you guys keep your Tokay geckos so that other people can learn from you as well. And until the next reptile adventure from here in Thailand, love the planet, feed your reptile obsession, and rattle on.